Hello and welcome back to the Thought Leader Recruiter podcast. I'm Sam Bylett. Today I'm joined by Stephen Kowalchuk, Managing Director of Corporate Management Advisors. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Good to have you. So could you first off, start us, walk us through the sectors you work in and the kind of roles you specialise in?
I'd be delighted to do that. So, my firm is a specialist in the housing industry. So, anything and everything associated with the housing industry. So, if a business is involved in it, we work with those types of customers. We got our start actually in the real estate finance side of the business and mortgage lending, doing anything and everything retail lending, wholesale, correspondent, warehouse lending, all the back end, doing default servicing, capital markets, and everything in between. So that's how we got our start. Then we moved into settlement services, so title insurance and escrow. And then we got into the vendors that support both of those industries. My firm's been in business since 1984. I joined in 1998. When I joined, those were the businesses that we were involved in. And so what I recognized was that there was a delta or gap in our business, if you will. And so I, along with the founder of the firm, took it upon ourselves to build out a real estate practice. So focusing on buyers and sellers, people who are actually procuring properties, because again, we had the financing mechanism and the other entities associated with it. We represent global franchisors, franchisees, independent real estate companies, and the entire brokerage community that services them as well. Over the history of our firm, Sam, we have placed just shy now of 13,000 folks. So on our website, you'll see 12,000, but it's closer to 13,000 at this point. So we've been very active in this space, and I've been active in this space for 27 years, but my firm has been in business since 1984.
And what brought you kind of personally into the space, and what keeps you kind of engaged for the long haul?
Well, that's, candidly, I was once upon a time, I was actually a professional musician, and then I was in the talent business associated with entertainment. And so there's some similarities between that, right? I represent talent now, and I represented talent then. The difference being one is extremely creative, on the entertainment side, and the other one is business focused. And so, it was literally, I've been an entertainer, I've been a talent agent, and I've been an executive recruiter. And the way that I got into it, Sam, was actually my neighbor um, is cousins with my business partner here. And he heard me on the phone doing what I do. And he told me one day, he said, you do what I do. And I said, well, what do you do? He says, I do what you do, but I do it with bankers. And I said, okay. And he said, you should come talk to us. At the time, I was much more interested in dealing with people, performers, right? Musicians, entertainers, and the like, because I enjoyed that aspect of it. But one day I had somebody who they didn't know what they wanted to do. And as somebody who's trying to help people, that's a problem. If you don't know what you want to do, how in the world can I help you, right? And so I thought to myself, I bet you bankers know what they want to do. I picked up the phone, I called my neighbor, and he introduced me to my business partner, and the rest was history. That was back in 1998. Here we are in 2025. And, every day is a great day, Sam. I mean, you know, there's certain challenges to the industry. You've got your peaks and your valleys, but it's never a dull day. I often say that because I enjoy doing what I'm doing, I don't feel like I'm working. When I when I say I'm working, I had a really bad day. That's what right? When you feel that, it's just because you've had a bad day. But I've got a myriad of different clients with a myriad of different issues. So it keeps you active and it keeps you thinking about different sides of the business and solving problems and solving challenges. I'm a problem solver. I'm a fixer with people. And so that's what's kept me engaged. And also my customers and my clients, quite candidly, Sam, because I've been doing this as long as I have in the industry. Many of my customers have actually become personal friends as well. So therefore, at the end of the day, I also have a personal vested interest, right? If you and I are friends and I'm working for you, it's not just you're my client. I have an emotional attachment to it as well. And so, my success is tied to their success as well. So that's what's kept me engaged. And every day is a new day and a new challenge and a new problem to solve.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love that. It's a great journey. And like you said, using that phone call, that's all it can take, isn't it? It's just one phone call, one moment, and it can just completely kind of map your life out. It's quite crazy when you think about it.
It is. Well, at the other end too, this thing right here, I use it every day. I pick it up and I'm meeting people on a day in and day out basis.
Yeah.
That's also part of what I enjoy. I impact people's lives. I've had the honor and privilege of representing some tremendous talent through the industry, and I've helped change people's lives. So it's exciting with that. And if you're happy, you're gainfully employed, and you're not looking for a job, you've got your head down. You don't know what else is out there, right? And so if somebody like me calls you and I develop cold call you, I call you, I pick up the phone, I introduce myself to you, I tell you who I am, what I'm doing, and I want to get to know you, right? 98% of people engage in that conversation. The 2% that don't, there's going to come a time in their career, 10 years from now or whatever. And I have these conversations where people say, when they do eventually end up calling me or whatever, and they say, God, I've had my head down so long. I don't know what to do now, right? They've been laid off, they've been fired, or now they're not happy. They don't like their job, right? And if you don't like your job, then you're coming in and you're doing this day in and day out. I have people call me all the time saying, I don't like what I'm doing. That's a problem. Life's too short to do stuff you don't want to do. If you're putting one foot in front of the other, going somewhere you don't want to go, don't go.
Yeah.
Life's too short, right? And so, I think it's really important for people to have connections and networks and look, even if you're not going to leave, to engage in a conversation with somebody because you may know somebody else that it may be a tremendous opportunity for. Maybe it was your old boss, maybe it's a former peer, maybe it's a current peer, right? And maybe if that peer leaves, then you have an opportunity to move up. There's all sorts of different ways to look at it.
Yeah, I mean that truly resonates with me because a few years back, I was kind of working for someone in a job I absolutely hated. Like I was depressed, for years, and then that was it. I finally made the jump, started my own business, and I've never been happier. It's amazing what you can do really with just one kind of decision you make.
It
So
is.
yeah, resonate with that completely.
That's great. And also with that, Sam, when your boss is a jerk, you got nobody but yourself to blame, right?
Yeah, I blame myself for a lot of things.
Benefit of working for ourselves, right?
That's right. That's right. In sectors like, say, private equity, real estate finance, what's the biggest risk when leadership hiring goes wrong?
Private equity, real estate finance, all that, you're losing a lot of capital, man. You hire the wrong people. I mean, you could hiring the wrong person in a sensitive sector like that, you could blow your investment, right? If it's a private equity group, you want to have a 3 to 5 year exit in company X and you drop in the wrong CEO, your investment could go to zero, right? So it's a huge, huge risk. It's important to make sure that you're hiring the right person. And, organizations that don't use search firms or just use it exclusively, their internal mechanisms. I mean, I've seen plenty of successful hires, but you're not seeing the whole universe out there. By and large, a majority, in my experience, I do have a few customers who do have aggressive recruiting organizations internally and they go to the outside, excuse me, but a majority of them, it's who's coming in, right? So it's inbound. It's what are you running from and what are you running to? You don't know what the issues are, right? Versus generally speaking, working with somebody like me, you're finding people who are gainfully employed, happy, and not actively looking. We've engaged them, we've got their heads up. And when that happens, generally, when you find somebody who is happy, gainfully employed, and not looking, and you get their head up, once their head's up, now they're open all of a sudden, right? Now it's like, well, if I'm going to look at if I'm with John Doe, why shouldn't I look at this with Jane Doe, right? What else is out there? If I'm going to pick my head up and put myself out there, but then too, if you're doing it on your own, there's the potential of getting caught. You get caught and you're gainfully employed, the ramifications are not very good because there's a high likelihood either A, you won't be employed, or B, you've got a target on you, right? Your boss says, well, Sam, you're out looking. So your boss is thinking, well, if Sam's looking, I better be looking to replace Sam, right? So it's a double-edged sword. That's why, as you know, working with an executive recruiter, there's that buffer in there. There's the confidentiality. You've got an agent, if you will, working on your behalf behind the scenes, proactively on your behalf. But I'm more client facing than I am candidate facing, meaning I'm a retained executive recruiter. So my clients pay me up front to go and do search work. And so because of the activities that I'm involved in, in many instances, I become a strategic partner with my clients. And as such, I become privy to information around what they want to be, right, in the future. We want to do X in 6 months. We want to do Y in a year. We want to do Z in 2, whatever. That I become familiar with how they're thinking and what they want to do and how they want to pivot or how they want to grow or whatever the situation is. So while on one hand, I'm a retained executive recruiter, secondarily, I also work strategically on behalf of many of my clients without actually having an active job order. So it's a case of, so yeah, I've got plenty of active searches, right? But some of my best placements, candidly, Sam, wasn't even an active job. It was a case of me being aware of a conversation that I had with the leader about where they wanted to go, who they wanted to be, what they wanted to do. And because of what it is that I do, I come in contact, as you can imagine, countless people every day. And as such, with few individuals, I will act on their behalf as an agent, super highly talented individuals. And so when I come across certain people that I meet and they meet criteria that can help my clients, I make that introduction and I'll say, that conversation that we had, you wanted to do X, Y, and Z. And we were talking about 18 months out. I've got somebody that I think that you should talk to. They can short circuit this. They can bring that 18 months down to 6 months. They've got a team that they can bring with or whatever it is, right? But it's me thinking strategically on behalf of my customers. And now, right, it's not a full blown surge, but at the same time, it's highly, highly valuable to them because they weren't necessarily thinking about doing this now. Some instances, of course, if the budgets don't line up, right, because sometimes it's contingent on budget, but many times the opportunistic hiring opportunities are they're tremendous. And those are some of the best placements that I've made of presidents of organizations or COOs, because as you know, many leaders, the higher up you go, the lonelier it gets, right? This thing doesn't, you're not getting as many of these the higher up the tree. So because of I've been doing this as long as I have, I have customers that have told me in the past, they're like, look, I'm happy, but if you see something that looks like blah, 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 tell me about it. I want to know about it. And many of these people, I've known them for decades. And like I said, they've become personal friends. And I think that once that happens in some instances, they're like, well, what else is out there? Right. And sometimes it's a founder who's exiting, right? What am I going to do? I created this entity. So what's next? They don't need me. I'm exiting, or I'm going to exit, or I've stood this company up and quite candidly, Stephen, I want you to find my replace me. And then after that, I'd like to work with you to find a new opportunity. Right. So it's instances like that where there's a blend, but I would tell you probably 85 to 90% of my business is client facing.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And what are some of the kind of key red flags that tell you a client relation may not be a fit?
Well, if they don't want to retain me, then then
Yeah,
we're not a fit.
yeah.
Because look,
One.
well, number one, yeah, because then that's akin to saying, Sam, I'd like to hire you, but I want you to work for free. Okay.
Yeah.
When's the last time? And then you turn it around. Then you ask me, well, Steve, when's the last time you went to work for free? That just
Mm,
doesn't work, man. Right. And it's like, in a retained capacity, I'm going to help you ultimately make the right decision. My activities and the work that my team is doing is going to help you make a highly educated decision. Even if ultimately this person comes through another avenue. The fact of the matter is, all of these people that you have met have brought you and led you to this one person, because you're going to find things and see things with these candidates out there that make them exceptional fits. So some other things that would be red flags would be if you miss it, if we're doing an intake call and you don't show up, right? Or if you're missing appointments, you're missing an interview, that's not a good client, right? They can fire me and I can fire them. It's a two-way street because it's my reputation as well, right? So both of us have that. So, and you know, I want to work with good people, right? I don't want to represent a jerk, right? Because then all of a sudden now I'm supporting the jerk. And I told you I impact people's lives. I don't want to impact somebody's life negatively. So if I meet somebody and I feel they're not a good person, just, my gut, if I wouldn't go out and have a beer with you, I'm probably not going to work with you. And you're probably not going to want to work with me. If we
Yeah.
can't be in a social situation, there's a high likelihood that you're probably not going to be, we're not going to be a cultural fit with one another. So it's really a matter of, do we don't have to agree on everything, and we don't have to be best buddies or anything like that, but there has to be some kind of camaraderie and some kind of connection. And furthermore, they have to be highly, highly credible. They have to have a great business, right? I've made mistakes early in my career, and unfortunately, I mean, look, I'm human, so of course I make mistakes. But I had one client in the not too distant past. I think it was last year, and they were an early stage company. I shouldn't have taken it. There was something in the back of my mind saying, "Don't do it, don't do it." And the person, where they were a chameleon, Sam, they tricked me.
Brilliant.
They were a chameleon. They showed me something else on the front end, and as soon as we started to work with them, they became someone else. But we were already moving down the path, and we were moving to hiring somebody. It was, I should never have taken them on as a client. I shouldn't have, and or they shouldn't have hired me.
Yeah. It was a
But
fit.
ultimately, I did hire somebody for them, and they were the right person for them. They were just not the people they purported to be, unfortunately.
Yeah. I like the part about going for a beer in the interview stage. I like that.
I mean, right? At the end of the day, if you're going to work with somebody, the reality is this: we spend more time with the folks that we work with than the ones that we love. That's a fact.
Yeah, yeah,
So if that's the case, I bet we don't have to be best buds, but there's got to be something there, right? It's like we're going to be together for a great period of time. So at least there's got to be some kind of level of appreciation for each other and what it is that we bring to the table and what it is that we're trying to accomplish and achieve.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And what's your kind of long term vision for CMA? Are you thinking about growth or?
Yeah, actually, we are. We're in the process of doing stuff right now. As a matter of fact, we're looking at spinning up a fractional business as we speak. So we're looking because we're just pure executive placement. We've evolved over the years as well, Sam. When I joined in 1984, pardon me, when I joined in 1998, the firm from 84 to 98, we were always involved in housing, but we had telecom, we had nursing, we had a consulting practice. The telecom industry blew up, or the when that happened, a bunch of stuff just went by the wayside, right? It just caused a lot of disruption. We went back to our core businesses, to housing. But as we look to the future, I don't know necessarily that as a core business, we'll look to alternate industries inside here as a core business. However, on the fractional side, we absolutely will be industry agnostic on the fractional side. And so that's something that we're looking at spinning up. And yeah, we are also looking at just growth in general. Candidly, Sam, a majority of the activities that we do, 95% of the work that we do is here domestic in the United States. I mean, relative to the housing market, this is the world's largest housing market. And so for us, it makes a lot of sense to be here. But at the same time, from a real estate finance perspective, we've done a lot of stuff overseas as well. We've built Wall Street firms. I mean, heck, we were involved in responsive or building the very first lending institution in Saudi Arabia, right? A Sharia lending compliant. There was no housing industry. The king owned everything under the sun, right? And you got something, Sam. The King Abdullah bequeathed it to you, right? It's not because you bought it, right? The king owns everything. But ultimately, they changed their laws to allow for home ownership. I think it was more from self-preservation perspective. If you don't own anything, there's a high likelihood that you're not going to your government's not going to exist if your people are paupers. And so ultimately, right, the king changed it, and you could have home ownership, and you could own land. But with that, there was no real estate industry. There was no such thing. So there was no, and furthermore, in Saudi Arabia, interest is illegal. You can't charge interest on a loan. So it had to be a Sharia compliant lending program, which is super unique, right?
Yeah.
It's an alien concept to you and I in the West, right? But a Sharia lending compliant product. And so we went and we built the very first private lending entity, literally building an industry where an industry didn't exist, literally pioneering it. It was like Lewis and Clark here as explorers in the United. I don't know if you know them since you're British. They were early explorers in North America. Lewis and Clark, they're storied American explorers going out west, right? When we were a colony, right? And so, they were going out west. They were meeting good Indians and bad Indians. They didn't know who they were going to meet coming around the bend. And it's not too dissimilar to something like that. You don't know what's around the bend, right? Could be something good, could be something bad.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so interesting. And as Gen Z and the millennials leaders move up, how is that changing what kind of board investors look for in senior hires?
Well, look, I mean, Gen Z and millennials, they think differently. They work differently. I would tell you that, I mean, look, my industry is an interesting industry on the real estate side. The real estate finance side, it's not quite the same as real estate. Real estate is an industry where leaders can take them out with their boots on, meaning there is no retirement age, right? Private equity, real estate finance, like in general business, there's a retirement age. People retire. And general brokerage, you'll see owners of real estate and realtors that are, octogenarians, and that's not uncommon. And in the real estate industry, it's generally also it's a second career. They've already had a career, so it's a second one. So, as far as what boards are looking for with millennials and Gen Z, I think it's fresh ideas. It's, how do you look at the world? How do you look at this problem? That's what I've noticed too, that the way, Gen Z and millennials, I think there's even a differentiation between those generations, right?
Yeah,
I'm Gen Z. I've got a bunch of millennials that work for us as well. They think remarkably different than I do. And my business partner is a baby boomer, right? So he thinks remarkably different than I do. So I think each segment brings something to the party that is unique. And so I think it's ideas, it's fresh ideas, Sam. That's what I think it is the most important thing they're looking for.
Yeah, I think Gen Z, I think, is a completely different generation to everyone. So yeah, very interesting. That is an interesting topic for sure. Just last question. Just want to just touch on candidates quickly. Especially those who are wanting to say move into C-suite. What should they be doing to prepare?
They should be taking on as many challenges as they possibly can. Absolutely. Don't stay in a silo. Get yourself, if you're in sales and you want to move up, you better get exposure to operations. You get out of your comfort zone. Don't stick in your lane, because then you're a one-trick pony. Get involved in multiple aspects of the business. If you can move and you can migrate and you understand each and every moving piece of the business, that's valuable. If you're singular lane, unfortunately, there's a high likelihood that you're going to get pigeonholed, and that's going to be who you are, right? In many instances, as an executive recruiter, I have a propensity to do that. I'm on the phone with you, I'm talking to you, and my brain is thinking, oh, okay, this is a salesperson. Oh, this person is an operations person. This person is a quant. This person is a finance person. If you blow that out the water and you are a little bit of everything, now that's a highly desirable skill set. If you can impact operations, finance, technology, sales, right? Talent acquisition, just looking at it holistically, that's a much more valuable candidate, and you're going to have a much more valuable professional experience, would be my suggestion and thought.
Yeah, fantastic advice. Well, Stephen, thanks so much for today. How can our audience get to know a bit more about you and about CMA?
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Well, they can find me out on LinkedIn. My name is Stephen Kowalchuk. It's down there printed below. My firm is Corporate Management Advisors. We're at www.cmainc.com. And look, if you ever want to call me and talk to me, you can always ring me at 407-869-1817. That's in the United States. So that's 1-407-758-7818.
Perfect. Thanks, Steve. Really appreciate that. So this has been the 4 Leader Recruit podcast, and we'll catch you next time.